Good afternoon, everyone. This is Kamal here.
Hi, this is Anil.
Anil, any reason for this topic today?
Well, I think it impacts everybody, Kamal. I mean, whether you personally get fired or somebody in your known circle get fired, this is something which you deal with on a day-to-day basis. I think so. And a career or a work life can be as long as in the new age can be as long as 50, 60 years. I can't believe that in that long period of time you can't have setbacks, you can't have jobs that you think doesn't fit you. So it can happen to anybody in that sense.
And the context also being changing all the time for everyone, every sector.
Absolutely.
And I have to ask you this time, Anil, have you ever got fired?
Yeah, not yet. I mean, so I hope I would not. But then again, as I said, this can happen to anybody. But as an HR person in my first few jobs, I've observed it at very close quarters. And as a manager, this is an unpleasant thing that you have to do. And as a headhunter, you always, observe this very, very closely and try to understand the dynamics behind it. What about you, Kamal?
I think I came close to getting fired once.
Yeah.
And maybe a couple of more times I can recall I was almost there. Maybe for my behavior or I don't know, for my relationship. Maybe for performance I can't think of, but I think I came close to that. So I can talk from that experience for sure.
Right.
And is there a better word than getting fired? Anil, why are we using the word fired here?
I mean, it sends a certain message across, but then, layoffs, companies use right sizing, a lot of different terms. Right?
Separation.
Yeah,
that has
separation.
been the favorite word. I was always trained to use the word separation whenever we sat with anybody.
Yeah.
For a termination or firing anybody, the favorite word was separation.
Correct. Yeah.
I don't know what's there in the word, but I think people get it today, and I think for the wider purpose of how it is being used today, firing is the right word, I guess.
Sure.
One aspect, Anil, which I think is well known to all of us, is what gets us in also can get us out.
Right.
We get people in because they're the right fit, and we get people out because they aren't.
Right.
And the strange thing is, I always debate with myself if it is a question of interviewing gone wrong or hiring gone wrong, or simply the dynamics have changed. Because I can recall that we sort of hired somebody senior once, and maybe the person oversold herself, and after coming on board I realized that this is not the person whom we actually wanted to hire.
Right.
So then obviously it leads to a separation.
Right.
The other side I can remember is when we hire people and the context of the organization then was sustaining success, and after hiring we realized that we reached a stage where in certain businesses we had to turn around.
Right.
And the same person was not the right person, or they didn't sign on for that, and we had to let the person go. So in a way, sometimes it's fit for what you hired and unfit for what they had to stay back for.
Right.
So that I think is the clear reason why this thing of why you get hired and why you get fired, the reason could be the same.
One is an personal and individual candidate centric reason. The other one is more organizational, right?
Yeah, but I think the topic, Anil, is more about after you got fired, what next? Because that is what I think we all know why you can get fired, but what happens next is the most crucial question for everyone. If you can start with the why.
Yeah. So I think you can get fired for the following reasons. We just put it in 4 boxes. One is for performance, which is straightforward. The other one is for behavior. Could be financial, irregularity, integrity issues, or some posh case on you. For those reasons, I would consider that as behavior. And then organization context, which is M&A, a downturn scenario, or automation simply taking away a job. And lastly, because of relationships.
But is there any one thing that will pick up on it? Because I can look at it and say,
right,
relationship is the most important thing that actually protects you when any other thing can actually sort of come in the way. I know of people who, sort of are not performing well, who even had bad behaviors, there some of them were implicated, and sometimes even context. I remember we were going through a global merger, and many people were losing jobs around us, and we could see some of them just sustaining even though they had no performance to back up. Behavior is out of question, but those jobs had to go, but the person just stayed on because the relationship with the boss was great.
Right.
So do you see any of these aspects where can protect one another?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, even in a downturn scenario, performance can really hold you in good stead. It can save you, it can rescue you from a layoff. I think each of this in its own individual nature can lead to a layoff, or having one of the strengths can really help you retain that.
Yeah, on the extreme side, we also have, the behavior may not be everything. If you have a great relationship, we know of people who had integrity violations,
right?
Who even had Me Too allegations against them, but were around because somebody said, hey, he's a great performer, can we protect him,
Right.
Or they had great relationship with bosses. So I guess all these things, in a way, can get you fired, but what is very important is not to assume,
right?
The bucket which actually suits you,
right?
But to look at, each one of them and examine where do you really belong, so that you can, sort of then get into the stage of accepting and taking stock.
Right. So, I mean, these are the sort of your personal ecosystem, which is family, your current company, of course, till you exit, your professional network. So you really have to think about what is the conversation you're going to have with them once you got laid off. So this is an important element, Kamal. You need to have your narrative in place. You need to think through how it's going to impact, these people and, around you.
So what we're telling Anil here is that what will you tell yourself, your family,
right,
your social network, because you're present in the social media along with, the social network you have, your professional network.
Right.
How are you dealing with your own peers, reportees, your current company, and what are you going to tell the future company? You're saying take stock of all these things. That's what we are saying, right?
Yeah. Although the act of layoff can come as an immediate shock to you, certainly it requires you to accept and then move on. So you need to really figure these things out.
Fair enough, And what do you do after that? In terms of accepting, looking at all the boxes that between you to family to network, current and future employer.
Right.
Very important that that you give proper closures. That's what we are saying here, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
That how do you clarify to yourself or to the bosses, seniors? Let's say you belong to one of the boxes where performance was an issue. Would you give a closure with your bosses?
Right.
Would you explain? Let's say if you were in a situation of a performance where you had to explain it what went wrong.
Right.
And I think besides clarification, one of the key things which struck me, Anil, was apologizing.
Right.
When would you apologize? Should you apologize? That was a question I was left with, because then I asked myself, would it be a case, let's say, mostly in the box of behavior?
Absolutely.
Sometimes when you could go wrong.
Yeah.
And,
so it was an error of judgment or a momentary lapse, that you had. It certainly makes sense for you to, go and, fix that. You can't fix it in a way you apologize and try to take amends. You take responsibility for it. That's what we mean by apologizing. Under no other circumstance is there an apology required.
Yeah, essentially also maybe, Anil, what we're saying is leave no loose ends.
Absolutely.
All these steps are important. In some of the phases you need to acknowledge.
Right.
Very important to remember the documentation part.
Right.
And we are saying don't burn any bridges, whether it's your customers, mentors, your team members. All we are saying is after getting fired, please don't do the following. That's what we're saying, because there is a kind of a rage, isn't it?
Right. Yeah.
What people can do. Can you think of things that people did, Anil, crazily because they got fired?
Yeah, I mean, the emotional response is sometimes the primary thing that comes to the fore. There's one of the people that I had worked with who got laid off, and then he triggered mails to some 8-10 people in the company, bad mouthing, the management, the local management here.
Mm-hmm.
People he did not know. He was just triggering this kind of a response. That was a sort of an emotional reaction. And even now, when I am called for a reference check for this person, I really think about this more than once, about how this can impact the future employer.
But I'm sure he's getting jobs repeatedly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
The person has moved on, but then I do think of this.
Yeah, but I think the devil gets the better of you. There's no question about it, because there's always a rage,
Yeah.
And there are situations that you come close to. You've seen people, sort of doing stupid things, writing on social media, almost thinking as though the life has come to an end.
Right.
And that is where I think, we sort of let the devil out of us.
Yeah.
But having talked about this, it's also important to look at what you should do.
Right.
And very clearly, I think of people with whom, we had to go through the separation. And I remember a gentleman who said, Kamal, now that this is done and dusted, can I get your reference? And I was taken aback.
Right.
I was like, oh my God, we just discussed how you're so bad for the company. And now I have to think of how do I actually say you're a good guy? So he said, look, Kamal, there's a context. We couldn't work together well.
Mm-hmm.
Can I get 2 months?
Right.
Okay, because that's the time I think I will need to get a new job.
Right.
So you know my personal situation.
Right.
So he said, I want the following things.
Right.
And I said, yes, I was like, maybe the guilt in me.
So you obliged.
I obliged. Not only that, even to his next job,
right.
I'm still his referee. So I think I really like the way he sort of negotiated.
Sure.
Sort of said that, look, you'll be my reference. So I think he really closed it well because I was the guy who was firing him,
Right.
But yeah, there are so many things that you can do post, getting laid off.
Right.
But the most important thing, Anil, would be to, in my view, is reviewing your finances, because you need to know what is your runway.
Right.
Till you can actually take your next job.
Absolutely.
Everything else can come in the spirit of the time that you have, whether you want to be a freelancer, whether you want to sort of be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and if your finances permit, Kamal, probably pursue an MBA. I mean, take a little different track. It's not completely out of bounds. I've seen several people who.
Sometimes it's ironical, Anil. You're losing a job and we're telling, okay, look for an MBA.
No, I've noticed somebody was on a wrong track. Parents pressurized him to get into a career, and that is sort of a pause that person got, and that person changed their career track after that. Took a break, changed the career track.
I think the key is also maybe holding the ego. Taking this as a pause and not a hard stop is something we mean, because in the ego, we cannot complete a documentation, not settle well with the current employer,
right,
and take it beyond, the emotions possibly trigger a lot of these things.
Right.
The most important thing I would do, if I think back in life, is to keep your insurance. For me, the insurance is your references.
Yeah, references, and then I would negotiate with my company who's laying off to give me some benefits, like a longer, insurance, for example, health insurance, till I get a new job or a notice period.
People give that, Anil, actually?
Yeah, a couple of cases I've come across, Kamal. Companies were quite, generous in that sense. They did allow, the person was actually...
Unless you're being laid off for a behavioral issue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or you had relationship issues.
Yeah.
I think sometimes people are a little more sympathetic when it is a context of layoff related to recession or M&A, and even performance. Sometimes people are a little lenient.
Yeah.
But I think the behavior parts and relationship quotients, if they're not so good, you can't really negotiate well, can you?
Absolutely.
But the key we are saying is, how you exit is upon you. Absolutely. Rather than your employer. That's what we are saying.
Absolutely.
It's a little difficult. It's emotionally, it's a situation where your emotion gets the better of you.
Yeah.
I like this slide the most. What are we telling you, Anil?
Kamal, I know you're a movie buff, and something from the movies have to be introduced here. What we're basically saying is what narrative you want to take on in your next, when you meet your next employer.
Are you asking people to lie, Anil, here when you say narrative?
No, not exactly asking people to lie, but there are certain things that you want to, a spin that you want to give, call it a spin that you want to give.
Spin is a lie.
No, spin is a sort of perspective that you want to leave with your next employer or companies that you're interviewing with. Or a narrative that you want to take on, so that it's not seen in a negative context in that sense. This is a brilliant movie where a proactive narrative was created and it got bought. But the only issue with this, Kamal, is that you will live in a constant fear that one day you will be found out. Mm-hmm. So whether it's worth playing that game is an individual choice. That's all we are saying. We're not asking people to fake, lie, misrepresent on the resume. We're not saying any of those things.
But if you're honest, are you likely to get a job, Anil? I doubt so.
In what context?
If you're getting fired and you're being honest, do you think people will still get the job?
Oh, there are, number of people who have, my experience. And there was one company that I remember going to, and they wanted to hire failed entrepreneurs. They called this failed entrepreneurs. It was a startup company. They said, we want to hire a lot of critical talent. So they said, it would be great if you can help us, hire some people. Because the value of the failure is what the company was looking for.
But I read a lot about it also, Anil, but I'm not really sure that, it is like, it's nice to romanticize, but the practicality also is that I'll give it to you that in terms of, I think, what is your narrative? How will you sort of create that convincing narrative? Because at the end of the day, you may not be lying. There were circumstances, you had bad relationships.
Right.
Unless, you had a Me Too situation and you actually, gobbled up money or, did something. Mm-hmm. I think in every other case, you can be honest. I'm sure the world is changing.
Right.
But we also know that honesty not always, pays, so there is always a creeping doubt rather in your mind that what could be wrong?
Right.
Is he or she telling the truth?
Yeah.
So,
Let's take some questions. I mean, there are some really interesting questions on how to approach a prospective employer. I think we just touched upon it. What is the justification that you would give? I think many of them do understand that. Many of them would understand that layoffs happen because of industry situation, downturn. So they're much more accepting. I don't think you need to lie on those accounts. Second question, Kamal, is there will be doubts that will be cast upon my credibility. It's again taking over from the earlier question, which is that, what do you tell the HR manager? Again, I mean, alluding to the earlier response that I gave, it's fine. You can, and sometimes you may even want to admit that it was a wrong career choice or a wrong career move that you made, and then you want to make amends. So it's not really, again, as I said, the end of the road. You can fix those issues and probably be honest and admit it, and then seek your next employment. I don't think that's such a uncalled of situation.
I think there are questions, Anil, around if it is in the context of slowdown where the employer is actually wanting to show like a mutual separation. What would you do? That's in a public domain. They don't want to show that they are in a slowing commercial operation.
Yeah.
So, but they're asking you to resign.
Yeah. So, Kamal, it's not so much of an issue of resignation or termination. It is an issue of whether you will get a reference from this company that you're leaving.
Yeah. Okay. There's this question from Amaninder Dhillon, actually who's asking us to comment on it. So specific to Amaninder, thank you for the question.
Yeah.
And it is definitely, we understand nobody wants to come out in public and say that, we are slowing down. Everybody wants to protect their brand image.
Yeah.
But my input to you is, you have to move on, right? Why do you want to actually get stuck with somebody who's asking you to tell you what you want, what they want you to be seen as? I would ask you to sort of move on, look into the next employer as to where you're going to build.
Yeah. Best thing is to get a reference, Kamal. Get a couple of good references, and then use that in your next career move.
Yeah, I think Amrit's question also is that when he resisted signing a mutual separation, they terminated the agreement impulsively. Yeah, not all employers are the same, and they all behave differently. My view is, if you have a good reference, who can back you up, that's the only way out from a termination, which is unfair. And the narrative that you have to create is about, having good references. That would be the only insurance I will take, Amninder.
But I'm sure there were earlier employments of this person who I'm sure the references can come out good, Kamal.
That's right. So Amninder, that's what we had to say in the limited time. I don't know whether we answered your question. Jairam has this question that wouldn't being laid off leave a bad impression in the minds of prospective employers? It does, Jairam. No questions at all. We are all human beings, and we're likely to think what could have happened there could happen here as well. Mm-hmm. But the world is changing, like Anil mentioned at the start of the webinar, that it is quite likely that people who are either sort of recruiting or today laying off people know that the world has a lot of transient situations, contexts are changing. So people being laid off is mostly contextual, unless the behavioral issues which are violation of integrity. Most of the other things are considered in the context. So the world is changing, but it's your luck. You don't know whom you're going to find next.
Yeah, I mean, there are several other companies who may be open to it, while some companies may be not open to it. I mean, you meet both sets of companies.
Yeah, I think there's one question from You. When you're fired, how should the person be careful about sharing the reason of firing?
Yeah, I mean, it's, first of all, with your own interest in mind, Kamal, you need to know why you got fired. Was it a performance issue? Was it a cultural issue? Was it a behavioral issue? Once you understand that, it's wrong to gloss over it or ignore it or cloud it with positivity. I'm not saying any of those things. All I'm saying is you understand the reason why you got fired. And if it requires you to change your career because you lack skill in that area, you better move to different career. If it is not, it is just a one-off sort of an instance, then you continue your pursuit in the same career. It's not the end of the road.
Yeah, that's for You. One question I think we have to talk about, Anil, is when your employer is targeting you, and you decide to quit without having a proper backup, is that a good decision?
Well, I would say that you hang on to the job as long as possible, because I mean, targeting is a strong word. I don't know why somebody would target a particular individual.
I would quit, Anil. I would quit. I will not stay there. When somebody is targeting me, sorry to differ.
Well, it's a little less data point to have. I mean, it again depends on your financial situation.
That's right.
If you're carrying EMIs and you're having a lot of debt, would you really do that?
I would still quit and borrow money from my best friend. Okay.
Yeah.
The last question that we'll take for today is performance-based termination is not recorded. Exit is shown as resignation. When it is not recorded, why should it be told to the next employer? Yeah, I agree. You may not want to tell, but like we said earlier, disclosure is your choice.
Yeah.
But like Anil said, do you want to live in the fear of being known eventually? Because these things, catch up. In a long career, all these things catch up. So you may want to, decide for yourself. But having said that, we also want to, conclude by saying that not all the times by being honest, you actually get your next job. But why be in a place that, they are not appreciating your honesty?
Right.
But sometimes life situations are context, bills to pay, like Anil said, EMIs, so many personal situations, school fees to pay takes over. So we end up, joining there somehow. So whether we have to say the truth or not, most often the reality, Anil, is that honesty may not fetch you the next best job after getting fired.
Yeah, that's why it said choose your narrative and be responsible for it.
Thank you, everyone, for logging in today. Thank you for the questions. Aminder, Jairam, Esgon, you want to thank you for asking those questions. And till we are back again, bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.